Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Manly P. Hall. We'll be tackling this today. Before I do, please like, share, and subscribe. Amish Mindset. You never know who you're going to reach if you don't do that. You might not be able to help me, but somebody else might, and that other person might not see me because you didn't hit the like button. And if you get anything from my work, an epiphany, a mic drop, a new author, a new book to read, please consider donating and helping me continue my work, help me with my move. There's a big transition happening soon. Don't know when. I will know more next week. And it's very stressful. Very stressful. Just going to put that, leave it there. But if you can help me, that'd be wonderful. Hopefully things work out in my favor. But we'll see. I don't always have the greatest of luck. The sun, like the one that shines the light, the simulated sun, a universal deity. The admiration of the sun was one of the earliest and most natural forms of religious expression. I'm going to put a pause in 2 seconds. If you see lights and shadows and things, I have my stage. Complex modern theologies are merely involvements and amplifications of this simple Aboriginal belief. The primitive mind, recognizing the beneficent power of the solar orb, adored it as the proxy of the supreme deity. Concerning the origin of sun worship, Albert Pike makes the following concise statement in his Morals and Dogma, quote, "To them, Aboriginal peoples, he, the sun, was the initiate fire of bodies, the fire of nature, author of life, he an ignition, he was to them the efficient cause of all generation, for without him there was no movement, no existence, no form. He was to them immense, indivisible, imperishable, and everywhere present. It was their need of light and of his creative energy that was felt by all men, and nothing was more fearful to them than his absence. His beneficent influences caused his identification with the principle of good, and the Brahma of the Hindus, and the Mithras of the Persians, and the Atham, Ammon, Pitha, and Osiris of the Egyptians, the Bel of the Chaldeans, and the Adonai of the Phoenicians, the Adonis and Apollo of the Greeks, because became but personifications of the sun, regenerating principle, image of that fecundity which perpetuates and regenerates the world's existence," end quote. Among all the nations of antiquity, altars, mounds, and temples were dedicated to the worship of the orb of day. The ruins of this secret place yet remain, notable among them being the pyramids of Yucatan and Egypt, the snake mounds of the American Indians, the ziggurats of Babylon and Chaldea, and the round towers of Ireland, and the massive rings of uncut stone in Britain and Normandy. The Tower of Babel, which according to the scriptures were built so that man might reach up to God, was probably an astronomical observatory. Many early priests and prophets, both pagan and Christian, were versed in astronomy and astrology. Their writings are best understood when read in the light of these ancient sciences. With the growth of man's knowledge and the constitution of periodicity of the heavenly bodies, astronomical principles and terminology were introduced into his religious systems. The Tuileries gods were given planetary thrones, the celestial bodies being named after the deities assigned to them. The fixed stars were divided into constellations, and through these constellations wandered the sun, its planets, the latter with their accompanying satellites. Note, the concept of the Tower of Babel differs from many. The solar trinity. The sun is supreme among the celestial bodies visible to the astronomers in antiquity, was assigned to the highest of the gods, and became symbolic of the supreme authority of Creator himself. From a deep philosophic consideration of the powers and principles of the sun has come the concept of the Trinity as it is understood into the world today. The tenet of the triune divinity is not peculiar, I can never get this word out projected wise. Peculiar, I tried, to Christian and Mosaic theology, but forms of conspicuous part of dogma of the greatest religions of both ancient and modern times. The Persians, Hindus, Babylonians, and Egyptians had their trinities. In every instance, these represented the threefold form of one supreme intelligence. In modern masonry, the deity is symbolized by an equilateral triangle, its three sides representing the primary manifestations of the Eternal One, who is himself represented as a tiny flame called the Hebrew Yad. Jacob Yeoman, the Teutonic mystic, calls the Trinity the three witnesses by means of which the invisible is made known to the visible, tangible universe. The origin of the Trinity is obvious to anyone who will observe the daily manifestations of the sun. This orb, being the symbol of all light, has three distinct phases: rising, midday, and setting. The philosophers therefore divided the life of all things into three distinct parts: growth, maturity, and decay. Hell's Matrix. Between the twilight of dawn and the twilight of evening is the high noon of pleasant glory. God the Father, the creator of the world, is symbolized by the dawn. His color is blue because the sun rising in the morning is veiled in blue mist. God the Son, the illuminating one, sent to bear witness of his Father before all worlds, is the celestial globe at noonday, radiant and magnificent. The maned Lion of Judah, the golden-haired savior of the world, yellow is his color, and his power is without end. God the Holy Ghost is the sunset phase, where the orb of day, robed in flaming red, rests for a moment upon the horizon line, and then vanishes into the darkness of the night, to wander in the lower worlds, and later rise again, triumphant from the embrace of darkness. To the Egyptians, the sun was a symbol of immortality. For while it died each night, it rose again with each ensuing dawn. Not only has the sun this diurnal activity, but it also has its annual pilgrimage, during which time it passes successively through the 12 celestial houses of the heavens, remaining in each day for 30 days. Added to these, it is a third path of travel, which is called the precession of the equinoxes, in which it retrogrades around the zodiac through the 12 signs at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. Concerning the annual passage of the sun through the 12 houses of the heavens, Robert Hewitt Brown, 32nd degree, makes the following statement, quote, "The sun, as he pursued his way among these living creatures of the zodiac, was said, in allegorical language, either to assume the nature or to triumph over the sign he entered. The sun thus became a bull in Taurus, and was worshipped as such by the Egyptians under the name of Apis, and by the Assyrians as Baal, or bull. In Leo, the sun became a lion slayer, Hercules, and an archer in Sagittarius. In Pisces, the fishes, he was a fish, Dagon, or Vishnu, the fish god of the Philistines and the Hindus. A careful analysis of the religious systems of pagandom uncovers much evidence of the fact that its priests served the solar energy, and that their supreme deity was in each case the divine light personified. Gottfried Higgins, after 30 years of inquiry, into the origin of religious beliefs, is of the opinion that, quote, all the gods of antiquity resolved themselves into the solar fire, sometimes itself as God or sometimes as an emblem or a shikna of that higher principle, known by the name of the creative being or God, end quote. The Egyptian priests in many of their ceremonies wore the skins of lions, which were the symbols of the solar orb, owing to the fact that the sun is exalted, dignified, and most fortunately placed in the constellation of Leo, which he rules and which was at one time the keystone of the celestial arch. Again, Hercules is the solar deity, for as this mighty hunter performed his 12 labors, so the sun, in traversing the 12 houses of the zodiacal band, performs during his pilgrimage 12 essential and benevolent labors for the human race and for nature in general. Hercules, like the Egyptian priest, wore the skin of a lion for a girdle. Samson, the Hebrew hero, as his name implies, is also a solar deity. He fights with the Nubian lion, his battles with the Philistines, who represent the powers of darkness, and his memorial feat of carrying off the gates of Giza, all refer to aspects of solar activity. Many of the ancient peoples had more than one solar deity. In fact, all of the gods and goddesses were supposed to partake, in part at least, of the sun's effervescence. The golden ornaments used by the priestcraft of the various world religions are again a subtle reference to the solar energy, as are also the crowns of kings. In ancient times, crowns had a number of points extending outward like the rays of the sun, but modern conventionalism has, in many cases, either removed the points or else bent them inward, gathered them together, and placed an orb or cross upon the point where they meet. Many of the ancient prophets, philosophers, and dignitaries carried a scepter, the upper end of which bore a representation of solar globe surrounded by emanating rays. All the kingdoms of earth were but copies of the kingdoms of heaven, and the kingdoms of heaven were best symbolized by the solar kingdom, in which the sun was the supreme ruler, the planets his privy and council, and all nature the subject of his empire. Many deities had associated with the sun. Greeks believed that Apollo, Bacchus, Dionysos, Sabazus, Hercules, Jason, Ulysses, Zeus, Uranus, and Vulcan partook of each of the visible or invisible attributes of the sun. The Norwegians regarded Balder the beautiful as a solar deity, and Odin is often connected with the celestial orb, especially because of his eye. It's true. Among the Egyptians, Osiris, Ra, Anubis, Hermes, and even the mysterious Amun himself had points of resemblance with the solar disk. Isis was the mother of the sun, and even Typhon, the destroyer, was supposed to be form of solar energy. The Egyptian sun myth finally centered around the person of the mysterious deity called Cyprus. The two Central American deities, Tecaquat. I am not going to get this out properly. Tetzaquapa. Anywho, and Quetzalcoatl. I got that out. And I do apologize. Allison can't project tonight. While often associated with the winds, were also undoubtedly solar gods. In Masonry, the sun has many symbols. One expression of the solar energy is Solomon, whose name Sol O On is a name for the supreme light in 3 different languages. Harem-Abif, the harem of the Chaldees, is also a solar deity, and the story of his attack and murder by the ruffians with its solar interpretation will be found in the chapter of the harem legend. A striking example of the important part in which the sun plays in the symbols and rituals of Freemasonry is given by George Oliver D.D. in his Dictionary of Symbolical Masonry as follows, quote, "The sun rises in the east, and in the east is the place for the worshipful master. As the sun is the source of all light and warmth, so should the worshipful master enliven and warm the brethren to their work. Among the ancient Egyptians, the sun was a symbol of divine providence," end quote. The hierophants of the mysteries were adorned with many insignia emblematic of solar power. The sunbursts of gilt embroidery on the back of the vestments of the Catholic priesthood signify the priest is also an emissary of representative of Sol Invictus. I didn't say it, he did. He said it. He said it. Christianity and the sun. For reasons which they doubtless considered sufficient, those who chronicled the life and acts of Jesus found it advisable to metamorphosize him into a solar deity. The historical Jesus was forgotten. Nearly all the salvant incidents recorded in the four Gospels had their correlations in the movements and phases or functions of the heavenly bodies. Among other allegories borrowed by Christianity from pagan antiquity, in the story of the beautiful blue-eyed sun god with his golden hair falling from upon his shoulders, robed from head to foot in spotless white and carrying in his arms the Lamb of God, symbolic of the vernal equinox, the handsome youth is a composite of Apollo, Osiris, of Orpheus, Mithras, and Bacchus, for he has certain characteristics in common with each of these pagan deities. The philosophers of Greece and Egypt divided the life of the sun during the year into 4 parts. Therefore, they symbolize a solar man by 4 different figures. When he was born in the winter solstice, the sun god was symbolized as a dependent infant who in some mysterious manner had managed to escape the powers of darkness, seeking to destroy him while he was still in the cradle of winter. The sun, being weak at the season of the year, had no golden rays or locks of hair, but the survival of the light through the darkness of winter was symbolized by one tiny hair which alone adorned the head of the celestial child. As the birth of the sun took place in Capricorn, it was often represented as being suckled by a goat. At the vernal equinox, the sun had grown to be a beautiful youth. His golden hair hung in ringlets on his shoulders, and his light, as Schiller said, extended to all parts of infinity. At the summer solstice, the sun became a strong man, heavily bearded, who in the prime of maturity symbolized the fact that nature at this period of the year is strongest and most fecund. At the autumn equinox, the sun was pictured as an aged man shuffling along with his bended back and whitened locks into the oblivion of winter darkness. Thus 12 months were assigned to the sun as the length of its life. During this period, it circled the 12 signs of the zodiac in a magnificent triumphal march. When fall came, it entered like Samson into the house of Delilah, Virgo, Delia, Virgo. Either way, Virgo, where its rays cut off and lost its strength. In Masonry, the cruel winter months are symbolized by 3 murderers who sought to destroy the God of light and truth. The coming of the sun was hailed with joy. The time of its departure was viewed as a period to be set aside for sorrow and unhappiness. This glorious, radiant orb of day, the true light, which lighteth every man who cometh into the world, the supreme benefactor who raised all things from the dead, who fed the hungry multitudes, who stilled the tempest, who after dying rose again and restored all things to life, the supreme spirit of the humanitarianism and philanthropy, is known to the Christendom of Christ, the Redeemer of worlds, the only begotten of the Father, the Word made flesh, and the hope of glory. The birthday of the sun. The pagans set aside the 25th of December as the birthday of the solar man. They rejoiced, feasted, gathered in processions, and made offerings in the temples. The darkness of the winter was over, and the glorious sun of light was returning to the northern hemisphere. With his last effort, the old sun god had torn down the house of the Philistines, the spirits of the darkness, and had cleared the way for the new sun, who was born that day from the depths of the earth amidst the symbolic beasts of the lower world. Concerning the season of celebration, an anonymous master of the arts Balliol College, Oxford, in his scholarly treatise, Mankind, Their Origin and Destiny, says, quote, the Romans also had their solar festival, and their games of the circus in honor of the birth of the god of day. It took place the 8th day before the calends of January. This is on December 25th. Servius, in his commentary on the verse 720 of the 7th book of the Aeneid, in which Virgil speaks of the new sun, says that properly speaking, the sun is new on the 8th of the calends of January. That is December 25th. In the time of Leo the First, Leo Serum, some of the fathers of the church said that what rendered the festival of Christmas venerable was less than birth of Jesus Christ than the return, as they expressed it, the new birth of the sun. It was on that same day that the birth of the invincible sun, Natalis Solis Invicti, was celebrated at Rome, as can be seen in the Roman calendars published in the reign of Constantine and of the Julian Hymn to the Sun. This epithet Invictus is the same as the Persians gave to this same god, whom they worship by the name of Mithra, and whom they caused to be born in a grotto, just as he represented as being born in a stable under the name of Christ by the Christians. Concerning the Catholic feast of the Assumption and its parallel in astronomy, the same author adds, quote, at the end of the 8 months, when the sun god, having increased, traverses the 8th sign, he absorbs the celestial virgin in his fiery course, and she disappears in the midst of the luminous rays and the glory of her sun. This phenomenon, which takes place every year about the middle of August, gave rise to a festival which still exists, and in which it is supposed that the mother of Christ, laying aside her earthly life, is associated with the glory of her son, and is placed at his side in the heavens. The Roman calendar of Colmula, sorry, I'm not saying that right, marks the death or disappearance of Virgo at this period. The sun, he says, passes into Virgo on the 13th day before the calends of September. This is where the Catholics place the feast of the Assumption, or the reunion of the Virgin to her son. The feast was formerly called the Feast of the Passage of the Virgin, and in the Library of the Fathers, we have an account of the passage of the Blessed Virgin. The ancient Greeks and Romans fixed the Assumption of Asteria, who is also the same virgin on that day. The Virgin Mother giving birth to the Sun God, which Christianity has so faithfully preserved, is a reminder of the inception concerning her Egyptian prototype Isis, which appeared on the temple of Sais. The fruit which I have brought forth is the sun. While the Virgin was associated with the moon by the early pagans, there is no doubt that they also understood her position as a constellation in the heavens, for nearly all the peoples of antiquity credit her as being the mother of the sun, and they realized that although the moon could not occupy that position, the sign of Virgo could and did give birth to the sun at her side on the 25th day of December. Albertus Magnus states, quote, we know that the sign of the celestial virgin rose over the horizon at the moment at which we fixed the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ, end quote. I'm going to put a 2-second pause here. All the way back back. The astrology was a bit different. There was Virgo, Libra, and possibly Capricorn that were like intertwined like this back in that time. Because Virgo is in August, in September. Just putting that out there. Just an observation. So like those three were combined in a sense, but then they were separated. Among certain of the Arabian and Persian astronomers, the three stars forming the sword belt of Orion were called the Magi, who came to pay homage to the young sun god. The author of Mankind, Their Origin and Destiny contributes the following additional information. Quote, in Cancer, which had risen to the meridian at midnight, is the constellation of the stable of the ass. The ancients called it Parsipe Jovis. In the north, the stars of the bear are seen, called by the Arabians Mithra and Mary, and also the coffin of Lazarus. End quote. Thus, the esotericism of paganism was embodied in Christianity, although its keys are lost. The Christian church blindly follows ancient customs, in which, asked for a reason, gives superficial and unsatisfactory explanations, either forgetting or ignoring the indisputable fact that each religion is based upon the secret doctrines of its predecessor. That is true. The three suns. The solar orb, like the nature of man, was divided by the ancient sages into three separate bodies. According to the mystics, there are three suns in each solar system, analogous to the three centers of life in each individual constitution. These are called three lights: the spiritual sun, the intellectual or solar sun, our sun, and the material sun, now symbolized in Freemasonry by three candles. The spiritual sun manifests the power of God and the Father, and the solar sun radiates the life of God, the Son, and the material sun is the vehicle of manifestation for God, the Holy Spirit. Man's nature was divided by the mystics into three distinct parts: spirit, soul, and body. His physical body was unfolded and vitalized by the material sun. His spiritual nature was illumined by the spiritual sun, and his intellectual nature was redeemed by the true light of grace, the solar sun. The alignment of these three globes in the heavens were one explanation offered by the peculiar fact that the orbs of the planets are not circular, but elliptical. The pagan priests always considered the solar system as a grand man and drew their analogy of these three centers of activity from the three main centers of life in the human body: the brain, the heart, and the regenerative system. The transfiguration of Jesus describes three tabernacles, the largest being in the center, the heart, and a smaller one on either side, the brain and the generative system. It is possible that the philosophical hypothesis of the existence of three suns is based upon a peculiar natural phenomenon which had occurred many times in history. In the 51st year after Christ, three suns were seen at once in the sky. Also, in the 69th year, two suns were seen together, according to William Lilly, between the years 1156 and 1648. 20 similar occurrences were recorded. Recognizing the sun as the supreme benefactor of the material world, Hermeticists believed that there was a spiritual sun which ministered to the needs of the invisible and divine part of nature, human and universal. Anent this subject, the great Paracelsus wrote, quote, there is an earthly sun, which is the cause of all heat, and all who are able to see may see the sun, and those who are blind and cannot see him may feel his heat. There is an eternal sun, which is the source of all wisdom, and those whose spiritual senses have awakened to the life will see that sun and be conscious of his existence. But those who have not obtained spiritual consciousness may yet feel his power by an inner faculty which is called intuition. End quote. I'm going to put a pause there. Wow. Everybody's talking about the solar flash. Everybody's talking about the light codes. Everybody's talking about the CMEs. Are we talking about what was just spoken here, the spiritual sun, giving its photonic rays to us to upgrade us? Putting that out there, neither. Certain Rosicrucian scholars have given special appellations to these three phases of the sun. The spiritual sun they call Vulcan, the solar and intellectual sun Christ and Lucifer, respectively, and the material sun, the Jewish demagogus Jehovah. Demiurgus. Lucifer here represents the intellectual mind without the illumination of the spiritual mind. Therefore, it is the false light. The false light is finally overcome and redeemed by the true light of the soul, called the second Logos or Christ. The secret process by which the Luciferian intellect is transmuted into the Christly intellect constituted one of the great secrets of alchemy and are symbolized by the process of transmuting base metals into gold. Mic drop moments. Mic drop moments. Mic drop moments. That's a mic drop moment. Why this is a drop moment? Because it explains the Lucifer Christ connection. Do I believe in that? But it's an interesting perspective, by the way. And also reading a Waspe, the Demiurgus as Jehovah makes sense reading that book. But we're living in the Lucifer, well, it's not Lucifer, it's like the Satan Matrix, but they use Lucifer. But the idea of the false light, but it's not really false, it's illuminating something. And it's the Christ consciousness in which we need to alchemize and transmute the Luciferian into the Christ. And things go back to gold. Back. Systems. In the rare treatise, The Great Symbols of the Rosicrucians, Franz Hartmann defines the sun alchemy as the sun of the symbol of wisdom, the center of power of heart of things. The sun is a center of energy and a storehouse of power. Each living being contains within itself a center of life, which may grow to be a sun. And the heart of the regenerated, this divine power, stimulated by the light of the Logos, grows into a sun, which illuminates his mind. In a note, the same author amplifies his description by adding, quote, "The terrestrial sun is the image or reflection of the invisible celestial sun. The former is in the realm of spirit, what the latter is in the realm of matter, but the latter receives its power from the former," end quote. In the majority of cases, the religions of antiquity agree that the material visible sun was a reflector rather than a source of power. The sun was sometimes represented as a shield carried on the arm of the sun god, as for example, Frey, the Scandinavian solar deity. The sun reflected the light of the invisible spiritual sun, which was the true source of life, light, and truth. The physical nature of the universe is receptive. It is a realm of effects. The invisible causes of these effects belong to the spiritual world. Hence, the spiritual world is the sphere of causation. The material world is the sphere of effects, which the intellectual or soul world is the sphere of meditation. Thus, Christ, the personified higher intelligent and soul nature, is called the meditator, who, by virtue of his position and power, says, "No man cometh to the Father but by me." What the sun is to the solar system, the spirit is to the bodies of man. For his nature's organs and functions are as planets surrounding the central life, or sun, and living upon its emanations. The solar power in man is divided into three parts, which are termed the threefold human spirit of man. All three of these spiritual natures are said to be radiant and transcendent. United, they formed the divinity in man. Man's threefold lower nature, consisting of his physical organism, his emotional nature, and his mental faculties, reflects the light of his threefold divinity and bears witness of it in the physical world. Man's three bodies are symbolized by an upright triangle, his threefold spiritual nature by an inverted triangle. These two triangles then unite in the form of a six-pointed star, where called by the Jews the Star of David, the signet of Solomon, and are more commonly known today as the Star of Zion. These triangles symbolize the spiritual and material universes linked together in the constitution of the human creature, who partakes of both nature and divinity. Man's animal nature partakes of the earth, his divine nature of the heavens, his human nature of the meditator. The celestial inhabitants of the sun. The Rosicrucians and the Illuminati, describing the angels, archangels, and other celestial creatures, declared that they resemble small suns, being centers of radiant energy surrounded by streamers of virilic force. From this outpouring streamers of force is derived the popular belief that angels have wings. These wings are corona-like fans of light, by means of which the celestial creatures propel themselves through the subtle essences of the superphysical worlds. True mystics are unanimous in their denial of the theory that the angels and archangels are human in form, as so often pictured. A human figure would be utterly useless in the ethereal substance through which they manifest. Science has long debated the probability of the other planets being inhabited. Objections to the idea are based upon the argument that creatures with human organisms could not possibly exist on an environment of Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. This argument fails to take into account nature's universal law of adjustment to environment. The ancients asserted that life originated from the sun, and that everything, when bathed in the light of the solar orb, was capable of absorbing the solar life elements and later radiating them as flora fauna. One philosophical concept regarded the sun as a parent and the planets as embryos, still connected to the solar body by means of etherical umbilical cords, which serve as channels to convey life and nourishment to the planets. Pause. String theory. Quantum entanglement. If you venture the law of one, Ra calls the sun the Logos. The sun's a portal. There is life on all these planets, just not in our density, not in our dimension. Maybe Mars. But we're all connected by etherical umbilical cords and strings and knots and ties, whatever you want to call it, to each other, and also to the multiverse, and also to other dimensions and planes of existence, where time and space bend and either do not exist. It only exists in third dimension, third density. Genius paragraph. Some secret orders have taught that the sun was inhabited by a race of creatures with bodies composed of a radiant spiritual ether, not unlike in its continuancy the actual glowing ball of the sun itself. The solar heat had no harmful effect upon them because their organisms were sufficiently refined and sensitized to the harmonize with the sun's tremendous vibratory rates. These creatures resemble miniature suns, being a little larger than a dinner plate in size, although some of the more powerful are considerably larger. Their color is the golden white light of the sun, and from them emanate 4 streamers of vril. These streamers are often of great length and are in great constant motion. A peculiar palpitation is to be noted throughout the structure of the globe and is communicated in the form of ripples to the emanating streamers. The greatest and most luminous of these spheres is Archangel Michael, and the entire order of solar life, which resemble him and dwell upon the sun, are called by modern Christians, quote, the archangels, end quote, or the, quote, the spirits of the light, end quote. If we if you go to the video that I just did on the Arantia book, it talks about the Michaels, plural Michaels. And they kind of talk about a little bit of this. Interesting. See how things are tying in together. They all weave. And again, I'm not saying that this is correct, right, wrong. It's a perspective. It's another point of view. It's just interesting how it's interlaying into things, in other things, within things. Just want to put that one out there. The sun in alchemical symbology. Gold is the metal of the sun and has been considered by many a crystallized sunlight. When gold is mentioned in alchemical tracts, it may be either the metal itself or the celestial orb, which is the source or spirit of gold. Sulfur, because of its fiery nature, was also associated with the sun. As gold was a symbol of spirit and the base metals represented man's lower nature, certain alchemists were called miners and were pictured with picks and shovels digging into the earth in search of the precious metal, those finer traits of character buried in the earthliness of materiality and ignorance. The diamond concealed in the heart of the black carbon illustrated the same principle. The Illuminati used a pearl hidden in the shell of an oyster at the bottom of the sea to signify spiritual powers. Thus, the seeker after truth became a pearl fisher. He descended into the sea of the material illusion in such of an understanding termed by the initiates the pearl of great price. When the alchemists stated that every animate and inanimate thing in the universe contained the seeds of gold, they meant that even the grains of sand possessed a spiritual nature, for gold was the spirit of all things. Concerning these seeds of spiritual gold, the following Rosicrucian axioms is significant. Quote, a seed is useless and impotent unless it is put in its appropriate matrix. End quote. Franz Hartmann comments on this axiom with this illuminating words. Quote, a soul cannot develop and progress without an appropriate body, because it is the physical body that furnishes the material for its development. End quote. The purpose of alchemy was not to make something out of nothing, but rather to fertilize and nurture the seed, which was already present. Processes did not actually create gold, but rather made the ever-present seed of gold grow and flourish. Everything which exists has a spirit, the seed of divinity within itself, and regeneration is not the process of attempting to place something where it previously had not existed. Regeneration actually means the unfoldment of the omnipresent divinity in man, that this divinity may shine forth as a sun and illumine all with whom it comes in contact. Wow. The midnight sun. Apuleius, maybe, said when describing his initiation, quote, at midnight I saw the sun shining with a splendid light, end quote. The midnight sun was also a part of the mystery of alchemy. It symbolized the spirit of man shining through the darkness of his human organisms. It also referred to the spiritual sun in the solar system, which the mystic could see as well at midnight as at high noon. The material earth brings powerless to obstruct the rays of the divine orb. The mysterious lights which illuminated the temples of the Egyptian mysteries during the nocturnal hours was said by some to be reflections of the spiritual sun gathered by the magical powers of the priests. The weird light send 10 miles below the surface of the earth by I Am the Man in that remarkable Masonic allegory, Aphrodite spelled backwards, may well refer to the mysterious midnight sun of the ancient rites. Primitive conceptions concerning the warfare between the principles of good and evil are often based upon the altercations of day and night. During the Middle Ages, the practices of black magic were confined to the nocturnal hours, and those who served the spirit of evil were called the black magicians, while those who served the spirit of good were called the white magicians. Black and white were associated respectively with the night and day, and the endless conflict of light and shadow is alluded to in many times in the mythologies of various peoples. The Egyptian demon Typhon was symbolized as the part crocodile and part hog because these animals are gross and earthly in both appearance and temperament. Since the world began, living things have feared the darkness. Those few creatures who use it as a shield for their maneuvers were usually connected with the spirit of evil. Consequently, cats, bats, toads, and owls are associated with witchcraft. In certain parts of Europe, it is still believed that at night black magicians assume the bodies of wolves and roam around destroying. From the notion originated the stories of the werewolves, serpents, because they live in the earth, were associated with the spirit of darkness. As the battle between good and evil centers around the use of the generative forces of nature, winged serpents represented the regeneration of the animal nature of man, of those great ones in whom these regeneration is complete. Among the Egyptians, the sun rays are often showing, ending in human hands. Masons will find a connection between these hands and the well-known paw of the lion, which raises all things to life with its grip. Solar colors. The theory is so long held these three primary, four secondary colors is purely exoteric. For since the earliest periods, it has been known that there are 7 and not 3 primary colors, the human eye being capable of estimating only 3 of them. Thus, although green can be made by combining blue and yellow, there is also a true primary green, which is not a compound that is right. This can be proved by breaking up the spectrum with the prism. Helmholtz found that the so-called secondary colors of the spectrum could not be broken up into their supposed primary colors. Thus, the orange of the spectrum, if passed through a second prism, does not break into red and yellow, but remains orange. Consciousness, intelligence, and force are fittingly symbolized by colors blue, yellow, and red. The therapeutic effects of the colors, moreover, are in harmony with the concept, for blue is a fine, soothing electrical color, yellow a vitalizing and refining color, and red an agitating and heat-giving color. It also has been demonstrated that minerals and plants affect the human constitution according to their colors. Thus, a yellow flower generally yields a medicine that affects the constitution in a manner similar to the yellow light or the musical tone mi. An orange flower will influence in a manner similar to orange light, and being one of the so-called secondary colors corresponds either to the tone re or to the chord of do and mi. The ancients conceived the spirit of man to correspond with the color blue, the mind with yellow, and the body with red. Heaven is therefore blue, earth yellow, and hell, or the underworld, red. The fiery condition of the inferno merely symbolizes the nature of the sphere or plane of force of which it is composed. In the Greek mysteries, the irrational sphere was always considered as red, for it represented the condition in which the consciousness is enslaved by the lust and passion of the lower nature. In India, certain of the gods, usually attributed to Vishnu, are depicted with blue skin to signify the divine and supermundane constitution. According to the esoteric philosophy, blue is the true and sacred color of the sun. The apparent orange-yellow shade of this orb is the result of its rays being immersed in the substance of the illusionary world. In the original symbolism of the Christian church, colors were of the first importance, and their use was regulated according to carefully prepared rules. Since the medieval ages, however, the carelessness with which colors have been employed has resulted in the loss of their deeper emblematic meanings. In its primary aspect, white or silver signified life, purity, innocence, joy, and light. Red, the suffering and death of Christ and his saints. Sphere, and of the states of godliness and contemplation. Yellow or gold, glory, fruitfulness, and goodness. Green, fecundity, youthfulness, and prosperity. Violet, humanity, humility, deep affection and sorrow. Black, death and destruction and humiliation. In early church art, the colors of robes and ornaments also revealed whether a saint had been martyred, or as well as the character of the work that he had done to deserve canonization. In addition to the colors of the spectrum, there are a vast number of vibratory color waves, some too low and others too high to be registered by the human optical apparatus. It is appalling to contemplate man's colossal ignorance concerning these vistas in abstract space. As in the past, man explored unknown continents, so in the future, armed with curious implements fashioned for the purpose, he will explore these little known facets of light, color, sound, and consciousness. Wow. Next time we'll read the zodiac and its signs. Can't wait for that. But this is really interesting, especially in the here and the now, with a lot of the claims that are being made about the sun and all the ancient stuff. And it's just very, I don't know, it's really awesome. So I hope you enjoyed The Secret Teaching of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. Highly recommended this book. And again, pluck what resonates with you. Lastly, Amish mindset. What did you do today to help somebody out in your local community or any one of your online communities? Did you hit the like, share, and subscribe? Did you repost? Are you looking at what you're abundant in so that you can give it to other people without depleting your own cup? What did you do today to help somebody? Write in the comments. I would love to hear it. Sending each and every one of you love and light. Again, I'm not sure when my readings will be done. It's sporadic. I'm really happy I'm gray already. I might be going very ultra white soon. We'll see. Until next time. Hopefully that's sooner than later. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.